Today, I'd like to welcome the Garcia family from Colorado. They have been avid Colorado campers since day one until a very special event took place 4 years ago at Chapman Campground close to Glenwood Springs. And they are joining us today to share with us their experience of a most unusual sighting for which Mark is the right person I think we have with us today. Join us as we talk about a Bigfoot sighting and much more. So I'd like you to meet Rick, Renee, and Lexi Garcia, and go ahead and just start telling us what happened 4 summers ago.
Well, we were going camping for the weekend, Father's Day weekend camping trip. Colorado natives, born and raised in the mountains, fishing, hunting, camping, all the time, every weekend. We were getting close up to going to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, getting close to our campsite when Renee got stung by a bee. She got stung by a bee when we got close, about 5 minutes away from the campsite. So we get there, we pull up, get out of the car, run down to the river, try to get some mud to heal the bee sting. And that's when we heard our first, was like a big rock just thrown in the water. Just landed right by us, big splash in the water right by us. And we didn't really think anything of it. There's big fish up there, so I told the girls, oh, it's probably a big fish splashing in the water, Go ahead.
So it was me and my mom, when we were trying to get the mud to heal the sting.
Yep.
When we heard the splash, we didn't think, like he said, we didn't think much about it. But at the same time, we were like, that was a little too loud to have been a fish. And then things started to the energy was shifting so fast, it changed so fast to where me and my mom were got paranoid immediately, and we were like, is somebody messing with us? Then we thought, did somebody throw a rock at us and it landed in the water? Did it reach us? That's then what we started thinking. But then, of course, you're not thinking anything else. So it was just like, okay, that's it. Let's get away from the river. Let's go to our camper, get our stuff out, start setting up.
She gave us a campground that was the only one open that wasn't reserved. And it was way back in the woods, all the way in the corner, like 30 feet away from the river. We started cooking dinner because we were expecting, my brother and his family and a bunch of other people were coming up to go camping with us. So we were just sitting there at the picnic table in the campground. Next thing you know, I see something moving in the trees. So I look over and I see it walking. I look again to make sure, and it's carrying a big rock about as big as a bowling ball. And that's when I just jumped up and I told the girls, run, run, run. And before I was done even saying that, it already had turned and came right up in our camp, face to face with us. And it wasn't dark outside, it was still light outside. And so that's when I jumped up, said, run, run. And I took off running, and we had our dogs tied up from tree to tree so they could move around in our camp. And I hit one of the clotheslines, and it clotheslined me, knocked me on the ground. And that's when I looked over and I could see the girls running towards the camper, and I was telling them, run to the car, run to the car. And then I looked back around, and that's when my dog was barking. My dog just started barking all crazy, just rah, 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 nonstop. And that's when I looked over and laying on the ground still, and I could see it. It didn't run away. It just walked away faster than it was walking up to us. So it walked away kind of fast. And then Renee had more experience closer when it came up to the camp, though.
Because immediately once Rick had said, run, he was gone. And I looked to see what he was running from. And that's when he was coming directly at me. He was just walking. His arms were swinging. He had really extremely long arms. And I would say he was about between 7 and 8 feet tall. And at first I really thought, this is a crazy, huge man coming into the campground. I still wasn't thinking Bigfoot, because he was shaped so much like a man's body, but a giant. And then I just was in shock, and he keeps walking right towards us, and he fully stood up at that time. And so I went to take off for my life, and right away I thought Lexi. I didn't know if she was up running yet, so I turned around, and I grabbed her by the hoodie of her, by the neck of her hoodie, just grabbed her and pulled her. But in that second, when I turned around to get her to take off running, he was standing on the other side of the fire pit, just looking down at me. So when I turned around and grabbed her, all I saw was him. I had to look up to see his face.
So he was right over you.
Oh yeah.
I would give him. He was about 3-4 feet away from me. I was standing on this side of the fire pit. He was directly right on the other side.
Well, there's a picnic table and then the fire pit. You know how the campgrounds are set up. He came right up to it.
And he was just standing there looking down at me. And I have to say, at that moment when I looked, in that second when I looked up at him, kind of felt like time had stopped moving. It was frozen. I can't explain it in words. It was kind of a mental thing. Like everything else around me just stopped, and I was just stuck looking at him in his face. It was weird, like time had stopped.
Oh my God.
But at the same time, it was seconds. It was seconds happening so fast. So when I looked at him straight, he was looking down at me. It was like we had eye contact. And I froze. And he was dead silent. He didn't make a growl. He didn't make a grunt. He didn't make any noise at all. Just stood there staring at me. So still, too. And that's when I just drug Lexi, and she's falling on the ground, and I'm just pulling her, dragging her on the ground, trying to pick her up. And we are tumbling over chairs. We're falling over the rocks. We fell a couple of times on the ground. We get up. We're just running for our life, screaming bloody murder. And me and Lexi ran to the back of the camper, but the back door was locked. And so we're trying to break the door, please. We're just screaming for help. But I never looked back again to see him if he was coming back at us, trying to grab us. I didn't want to look back ever again. Once I had that eye contact with him face to face, I never look back again to see if he was even coming after us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to open the camper door, and I still didn't peek around the camper to even see where he was. I didn't want to see it again. And finally, I realized the door's not going to open. So Lexi pulls me and starts running to the car to jump into the vehicle. Rick was already in the car. He had opened up the doors for us, and he's like, "Get in the car." So we finally get to the car, shut the doors, and that was the second when we all three realized
What we saw.
that it was Bigfoot, what we saw. I just started screaming immediately. That was Bigfoot. That was a Bigfoot.
It was like a real horror movie. We all jumped in the car, ready to take off. No keys. They're in the camper. So we couldn't go nowhere. We were stuck in the car. Yeah, the girls were crying, screaming, yelling. So all I did was start honking the horn all crazy on the car, just honking the horn, maybe to scare it off more, get somebody's attention, something. So I honked the horn for like a half an hour straight, just honking the horn. Finally, a forest ranger comes. He said he'd been following the sound for miles, and he wanted, he knew it was a distressed sound because I was just honking all crazy. So he came up, and I told him, "Give me your gun. Let's go. Give me your gun." And he's all, "What's going on? What's going on?" I said, we saw Bigfoot." And his jaw dropped to the ground, and he turned pale white. And he said, "I've been a forest ranger up here for 40 years, and I seen it 10 years ago." And that's when he looked at me, and he's like, "I'm out of here." And I go, "No, give me your gun. I got to get my dog." And my dog was still down there barking because the dog is what scared the Bigfoot off. When she started barking real loud, that's when he took off,
She never stopped.
She never stopped barking until I went down there and grabbed her. And when I touched her, she fell on the ground and just started convulsing, just shaking. I had to pick her up and carry her back to our camper. But as soon as I did that, the forest ranger told me, "I'm out of here, and you guys should leave right now too." So we didn't. We just stayed there all scared all night in the camper, looking out the curtains, scared all night long. Family never showed up. Nobody ever showed up. They got broke down in Vail, so they had to spend the night in Vail. And so we stayed up all night, just scared, crying, taking turns, sleeping, looking out the windows.
Mm-hmm.
And finally the sun came in the morning, and I told the girls, "We're out of here. I'm leaving the camper. Everything in the campground is staying. We're leaving. We're just jumping in the car and leaving." So we jumped in the car and we started leaving. And when we get over to the forest, to the ranger station, then my brother and them are coming down the mountain in their truck, all happy, happy to be camping, stereo playing all loud. Everybody's all hanging out the windows and stuff. And us three are a wreck, crying to death. Didn't even sleep all night. Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was bad. And so they pulled up, and I told them, "We're out of here, bro. You can have the camper, everything. I'm gone." I told them what happened. And my brother and my nephew are hunters. They hunt, all my family hunting, camping, and everything. So they're like, "No, let's stay. Let's go see. So we went back like dummies. We went back to the camp, And we stayed there, and the smell of it stayed in our camp for 3 days. It smelled like the dump, an outhouse, everything all mixed together. It was horrible. So the next morning, we went tracking, because my brother and them are hunters. So they said, let's go see if we could, find something. So we went down the river, and there's a little river that comes down the mountain that goes into the big river. And it stepped right through it. Perfect mud print of the footprint of it. So that's what we had found, the footprint. I mean, I didn't have anything to cast or anything, so I couldn't actually take the footprint. That's why we got all the pictures that we could of it. Sure. And then the rock was still right there in our camp where he had dropped it. When the dog started barking and stuff, we took pictures of that.
Yes.
But yeah, man, it was something else. It was my worst nightmare come true.
Because we really were just trapped. We felt so trapped in that camper all night. We didn't have no weapon.
Yeah.
We had some kitchen knives in the camper, and after what I saw, that wasn't going to help. Nothing.
Oh, that thing is so massive that they could pick up my truck and throw it. It's massive, huge. Just, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I saw. I had to look twice, 3 times just to make sure before I said run, because it was something.
And you've never gone back camping again since?
No. Right? We sold our camper. We haven't been back since. We haven't. It's not the same anymore.
As close as that thing was, do you not feel that if it wanted you, it could have got you?
Oh, easy.
Of course.
Easy. No question about it. Just reached right over. The arms were like 6 feet long. Long arms, man. I mean, it was just walking up the side of the river, carrying a big old rock as big as a bowling ball.
And he wasn't trying to hide from us. I mean, he definitely looked at us and walked right directly towards us.
Yeah, he wasn't scared of us for sure. Even when he left, even when the dog started barking and stuff, he just left a little bit, walking fast, but not running or anything, just walked away kind of fast. That was it.
I wanted to backtrack from the minute. It was like a few seconds before my dad started saying, like, so I looked over him, because what I was doing, I was staring at the fire, like, dozing off. I was tired. I was just staring at the fire for a good 10 minutes. So when I looked up to look at my dad, I couldn't see anything. Everything was like purple. I was seeing spots everywhere. I couldn't see. But I went to look at him, and I kind of noticed I saw him leaning in his chair, kind of looking, and I kept blinking because I couldn't see anything. But I noticed how he was like sitting up in his chair, looking over. He was like leaning forward, and I just saw him. I saw parts, like his eyes like bulged out of his head, and he just said, "Oh my God, run!" Like, it's almost like the words couldn't even get out of his mouth.
Yeah, I couldn't even say it.
And then I was so scared. I thought he was joking because he messes around like that, and I thought he was joking. So I was just sitting in my chair still thinking, oh, he's just trying to scare me. There's nothing going on. But then I saw him take off, and he didn't stop running. So that's when my mom got up, and then I eventually got up, and I still couldn't see anything. I was blinded, and all I did was felt my mom grab my hoodie, and she just dragged me because I was so far behind. And the minute she grabbed me, I did see her look up, and it was just, I won't forget the look, because like I couldn't see, but I was like seeing parts. Like, it was terrifying for me because I couldn't see what was really going on. But I will never forget the look on my mom's face. That it was more than her seeing like she saw ghosts. Like, I knew she saw something, and even I never turned around and looked because I had felt it behind me, and it was really crazy. But I had this feeling for the first time in my life. I had felt I felt literally something was gonna just grab me and just pick me up and run away with me. Like, I had this feeling for the first time that I was probably gonna die. I was so scared. Like, I didn't even have to see anything. I felt it. It just gave off this energy of it was either going to take me or not. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I felt it, that I was probably going to die. Like, I was like, this is it. Something's going to grab me. I knew it.
The energy was there before. Like, when we were setting up camp, I went to go fill up the water jugs. And when I was filling up the water jugs on the pump, I could just feel something just watching me, man. It was just, I never had that feeling in the mountains ever before, man. And I was just looking around, scared, looking around, and I could just feel it on me, man.
And she was doing the same thing too when we were in the midst of trying to get the mud on her bee sting. I noticed when we were setting our camp up, my mom kept just being to herself. She was looking around everywhere, and I was kind of like making fun of her, and I was just like, why are you being all paranoid? Like, there's nothing here, it's just us, like, we're fine. If there's probably just deer around or something, there's nothing to be worried about. And I remember she said, no, I feel like something's watching us, like I'm scared. And this happened a little bit after we heard the splash in the water, like it was a rock. And
it was when us two were by ourselves while he went down the road to get the water.
Yeah.
And we were sitting at the campfire together, and oh yeah, I ignored it. I ignored my gut feeling. I really did that day because I knew something was going to happen. I could just feel it in the air. I looked like a hawk. I just was looking every direction. I kept telling her, I am scared to death out here. Let's go back in the camper. She's like, Mom, it's okay. No, it's okay. But she even knew, like, she even asked me, why are you acting like that this camping trip? And I just kept telling her, I said the same thing. I feel like something's watching us. Like, I'm scared for some reason. And I'm never scared of the mountains. That's like my second home. I love it there.
It's our comfort place.
Exactly.
But his energy and his eyes were in the air. I don't know how else to say it. He has an energy to it.
Yeah, I know that feeling you're talking about. You can't put your finger on what the feeling is. You just know it's not normal. You know, it's not. It doesn't feel the way it's supposed to feel.
Yeah.
And you get that with a lot of. I've had that before with a lot of situations involving paranormal and supernatural. It's just like, you know, when something's going to happen. It's almost like the hairs on your arm start sticking up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And actually, you mentioned actually seeing the reaction of your parents in their face. It's an old technique in horror movies from years ago, Hitchcock and all. They never showed you the monster. They showed you the people's reaction to the monster because that was scarier.
Yeah.
So the only thing probably scarier than seeing something like that is seeing the alpha male in the pack, you know, his eyes coming out of his head and the mothering figure of the family.
Yes,
Yeah.
run.
Yeah.
I probably would have rather have seen the Bigfoot than that reaction myself.
I was telling my mom many months after it happened that I believe 110% that I think everything happens for a reason, and I really believe that I was meant to be blinded from staring at the fire, seeing the spots, because I think if I would have seen what was there, if I would have seen Bigfoot, I would have froze, and I wouldn't have even gotten out of my chair, and I would have died that way, because that's what I felt when I knew it was behind me. I felt the sense of that it just wanted to kill me. That's all I felt. It was just like a predator going after its prey. It was gonna take it. It was just gonna do it. That's the only thing that I felt.
We both felt like something was going to. We felt out. It was the weird. It was all feelings with him.
Yeah.
Like you could just feel something was going to grab one of us.
Renee, you're an empath. When you were crouched down by the fire and you were looking up at him, as you described, what were you receiving from this being at that time?
To tell you the truth, it sounds kind of funny, but he was looking down at me like, "What are you doing?" Like I was the dumb one. Like, "What are you doing?" And I felt more from him like he was more curious. Like he was curious, not wanting to really kill or anything like that.
Okay.
I just felt he was curious. Maybe trying to get us to leave, like this was my ground. What are you doing here? I don't know. It's hard.
What you did when we got there, the howl that you did.
Oh.
he had just made like this howl, like it was just a yell out. He was just doing it out of excitement when we first got there.
He calls it his Yeti yells.
Do you think that brought him?
Never knew. I've done it my whole life. I always called it my Yeti yell.
Do you think that's what brought him to the site?
Oh man, I don't know, but I'll never do it again.
Could you smell it when it had first made his appearance clear to you, or only after you seemed to come back to the campsite?
No, we smelled it when he was there, and it stayed there.
I see.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe he stayed there?
He might have. I don't know. I wasn't going to look.
If he stayed there?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you say the smell was there for a couple of days,
Yeah.
I
I could feel like he was there still the night. I knew he was there through the night. I could sense and feel it. I knew he was watching us, and that's why I told him I didn't want to even sneak into the car from the camper at any time during the night, because I could feel that he was there watching us in the camper. He knew he was watching us hide. And I was so scared if we go out those doors, he's going to grab one of us out of nowhere in the pitch black. But the next day as soon as the sun came up, when we peeked out that door, that's all you could smell still. So I felt that whole day he's watching us still. I just knew he was still watching from somewhere.
How late in the evening was it by the time you got the campfire set up? And
it was about 8:40, I believe. I wrote down on a piece of paper. It starts getting darker in the mountains at 9.
Had you started cooking?
Yeah, we had finished
cooked
cooking
earlier. Yeah, I was cooking dinner for everybody to come earlier. So, yeah.
This happened about an hour after we finished dinner.
And the reason
we had dinner about 7:30, and about 8:40.
Okay.
That's when he just popped out of nowhere.
How was this Roxy that was barking the whole time?
Yeah.
And convulsing afterward? How long did it take for Roxy to calm down?
Oh,
she's still not calmed down.
I noticed ever since that happened, she became a lot more paranoid.
She's jumpy.
She's really jumpy. Like when it happened, when he went to touch her and she fell on the ground and started convulsioning, she does that thing to where when you touch her, her whole body
shake.
Twitches and she jumps.
And she wasn't like that before.
Oh no, not at all.
She was only a 6-month puppy
Yeah.
when this happened. Now, of course, she's 4 years old.
Right. I don't have a lot of experience hunting, but I do know that they do speak of a musky odor of animals that live in the wild, and prey animals have a different scent compared to predatory animals. So deer versus bear, I guess, for instance, bear being described as very strong odor and musky. Was this similar to that or different yet?
Oh, it was about 10 times worse than a bear smell.
Okay.
For sure. I've smelled a bear in the woods before, but this was way worse.
It was way worse. It was like the minute we walked out the camper door, that's all you could smell.
All that was in the air, the smell of like we were sitting in the middle of a wet, hot dump.
That's what it sort of reminded you of, like a wet hair smell?
Like a wet, stinky dump.
Like a dump site, like rotten trash, maybe.
Yeah. The hair on it was pretty long. It wasn't short hair. It was long hair. I remember seeing like the hair on the back of the neck when he was walking up the side of the river.
Yeah, so probably this long or longer.
Yeah, about hand length.
Mm-hmm.
That was.
So if you had a mid-ground and you had human on one side, animal on the other, which way would this be going?
Right in the middle.
I don't know.
Animal and human, because it walked standing up. It was carrying a big rock. I mean, the look.
What kind of nose did it have?
A smashed nose. To
Like
me, I mean,
squished?
Yeah.
You said it had a really tiny. She said it had a really
Tiny head. Yeah, his head was not proportioned for his huge body. That's for sure. Really tiny head. Really beady black eyeballs.
And a smushed in nose with black eyeballs.
Well, other Yeti hunters and stuff had told us that what we saw was probably a young Yeti.
Yeah, I was getting the impression of a young one.
Yeah, that it was a younger one because of the size and just the footprint and
they were also saying it being young for it to come to us, because they said a Yeti would not go up to you. They would
A mature
run away,
one.
hide.
Right.
They
Would
want
not
to
do
hide
that.
and not be seen. But yeah, this one was kind of like young and dumb and curious, I think.
It was like to me, how everything sounds, it was like a trigger the minute, because my dad was saying it was walking up the riverbank, but it was like hunched over, and then it was like a trigger that as soon as he yelled is when he heard it, and then saw us, got up, and then the rock it was carrying, it was literally dropped at the exact turn from when it met up with our dog, because that's where our dog was at the trees, tied, and it's like the rock that it was carrying, it dropped it the minute Roxy started barking at it.
So it probably dropped
Right
it
on that turn.
out of surprise, perhaps, or it was startled.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the forest ranger had told us when he was telling my dad, like, I've seen it 10 years ago, he said that's the only thing that's up here is small black bears. And he said
Bear would have
that
killed your
yeah, he
dog.
said that wasn't a bear because that bear would have killed your dog in a minute. And it was horrible because when we were in the car just screaming, just stuck, no keys, I was in the back seat just crying because I couldn't get out, I couldn't do anything, and I just had to keep thinking I'm gonna hear my dog die.
Because they were both still left outside, correct?
Yeah, the dog was still tied up to the tree down there.
Oh,
Right.
and then Anjali, this is when we still had Peanut. Peanut was in the
Yep.
camper.
Yeah, I was wondering where
Peanut.
Peanut was during all of this. He was in the camper.
He was in the camper sleeping. It was
After dinner.
it was senior bedtime.
We put him to bed after dinner. Thank goodness.
Well, it's a good thing that Peanut was inside because my recollection was Peanut was a very small little kid. he was
Yeah.
Yeah.
much littler
pounds.
compared to even Roxy being a puppy, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was in the camper that we couldn't get to. So it was Roxy was outside by herself and Peanut was in the camper and us three were in the car. Everyone was on their
Separated.
own.
And you weren't even together. Oh my gosh.
Nope.
Yeah, everybody was on their own. It was horrible. It was so horrible.
Well, there's a lot of other things that come with these sightings. Are you familiar with a guy named David Politis?
No.
Does it go by Bobo?
Don't know.
Oh.
But David Politis used to be a detective, and now he dedicates his life to investigating disappearances in national parks.
I've actually read one of his. I do know who you're exactly talking about.
Yeah, he does the Missing 411.
Yes,
Series.
exactly. Yep.
But I would be interested in taking your location, and he archives all these things, and you could probably look at his work in your location and you would have cases and numbers if there's people that have gone missing in that area.
Oh wow, yeah.
And he's correlated a lot of this with Bigfoot sightings and things like that.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever heard of anything Bigfoot, I used to live up near Seattle, up north toward British Columbia. And you'd meet people out there that you'd know who said they saw these things.
Mhm.
People who you had no reason to not believe.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the wilderness in Washington State, I mean, there's thousands of miles that people have never even been in. And Colorado, I'm sure, is the same. But then when you come where I live in Ireland, it's a very small island with hardly any forest at all. And you also find people here who have seen the woodwoosis, is what they call it. Same description. A smell that you can't take, 8 to 10 feet tall. And the case that I know of is a military man, trained observer, career military. He's hiked on all the local mountains and hills. And he was walking down off one of the mountains a couple of years ago, and he saw like a 10-foot tall bipedal creature walking a fence row and plain as day. But it was being followed by military people. And so the thing is there's no forest here for these things to hide, so there's no way they could be a naturally evolving species that's remained undetected, because the country is just not big enough. We're surrounded by water. There's hardly any trees. So there has to be some reason why 1 minute they're here, the next minute they're somewhere else. And you mentioned Father's Day weekend, and that typically falls on the summer solstice. And there's something energetically about that day. All the ancient sites here, 4,000-year-old ancient sites, were built perfectly aligned for the summer and winter solstices. So there was something that made these people spend years building these massive stone structures to mark that day. And I don't know if it's involved with some type of interdimensional doorway or something like that.
Yeah.
Not about, Anjali, can you look into stuff like that?
I can sure try. And the question that I was going to ask was, didn't you also just share with me that around summer solstice is the time when crop circle emergences also start happening? I've been noticing a lot of them showing up just in the last week.
That's true. And I mean, but it's hard to tag the solstice with that, because it's also the time when the crops are in a state where the crop circles could be made. So maybe it could be a coincidental thing that just happens to be the time of year that the crops are ready. The crop circles can be made, and it could be an energetic thing as well. They have been seen all times of the year, but that's when they have a crop circle season. It usually starts at the end of May and runs up until July.
I'm going to ask for a search sweep of a 1 mile radius centered around.
It was campground number 77. And I have written down that it happened at 8:40, between 8:40 and 8:45 in the evening.
Okay. I'm asking if there are life forms in that radius between then and even through to the present day. Life forms differing from what we consider normal Rocky Mountain, riparian forest life forms, to see if we can identify something other than bipedal human, something other than bipedal human, but is bipedal humanoid, approximately 8 to 10 feet tall, with a disproportionately small head and facial features, yes?
Yeah.
And black eyes, yes?
Reddish brown hair.
Reddish brown hair. Okay, can you tell me whether these creatures are still in this radius today, 2021? Yes. In that 1 mile radius, can you give me an approximate regular population? Is there more than 10 traversing this 1 mile radius space? No. How many? There is a family of 3. So in 2017, would it be considered 2 mature adults and 1 youth, adolescent, young adult?
Can you ask if they were born there or were they brought there?
Yes. Can you tell me, is this their natural indigenous habitat? Or did they come from elsewhere? They did not come from elsewhere. Is this their natural type of habitat? Yes. And would this be their home, this one mile radius vicinity? Would that be their main home? Yes. And can you tell me how many generations preceded these adults and young adult constituting the family? I'm getting approximately 700 generations.
Amazing.
And are they constantly on our frequency or can they shift between?
They are not natural third dimension beings. Can you tell me what is their natural dimension according to the 12-dimensional model? Second dimension.
Leprechauns, fairies?
Yeah, there's something that's taking us more into the elementals, what we would call the elementals.
What about agenda? Was there going to be food? Was there going to be a kidnapping or curiosity?
The reason that they were brought to campsite 77 on June 19th, 2017, was this youth attracted by the smell of cooking food? Do human beings constitute the diet of these creatures? No. They don't eat people. Okay. Would they eat pets and small animals? They can. And can you tell me, are these creatures in the process of phasing out of Earth life? Yes. Does this mean that we are looking at humanoid type beings that preceded Homo sapiens? No. That have been here in parallel with Homo sapiens? Yes. Did they arrive here from another planet? No. They belong to Earth. The Earth belongs to them and they belong to Earth.
I'm scared to ask Anjali, but like Mark said, was they planning a kidnapping?
Were they planning on taking, was this youth planning on going back and reporting to his parents that people were present? Yes. For the purpose of harm or displacement? No. He just was wanting to go back and say, hey, look what I found. Look what I found. So was there any intent to harm or to hurt? No intent to harm or to hurt. I think it was just as we had discussed earlier, that it was probably curiosity. There's a sense of curiosity, like he was looking down on you, like, what are you doing? Right?
That's the look he gave me if he could talk.
Right. What is? Go ahead, Mark.
Was he attracted to Mr. Garcia's Yeti growl?
Did the Yeti owl get his attention? Initially, yes. And then the smell.
Oh, that's it.
Then the smell of the
That's it.
cook. Then the smell of the cooking. Do these beings have a howl? Do they have a howl of a similar nature? They do have a howl. It doesn't sound exactly like yours, but they do have their own. They definitely do have their own.
Glad I didn't hear it.
What is their lifespan? What is their lifespan? Is it in the order of tens of years? Is it in the order of hundreds of years? It's in the order of hundreds of years. Give me the first digit. 1. Give me a second digit. 6. Give me a third digit. About 160 years is the average lifespan for one of these beings. And the feeling that I'm getting is that the planet is going through an ascension. We're all trying to raise our vibration and level of consciousness to go through our own ascension process. Are these beings a part of that ascension process? They are not. Does that mean they will be phasing out? Yes. Does that mean for our third dimension that will they just phase out from our perception in third dimension? Yes. And does this equivocate to a dying off? A dying off? No, not so much a dying off as just becoming less visible and displaced out of phase, if you will, from our ascending frequency and vibration. So they will come out of our notice and perception in the same way that for many people, paranormal and ghost apparitions are outside of our awareness and perception. Ghosts and paranormal of that nature is blending down from fourth dimension into third. Some people see it, some people don't see it less or not at all. This one is happening at the other end of the spectrum. It's showing up in
conditions. Is it that makes them visible? Because they're not always visible.
That's right.
Second dimension.
That's right. If they're second dimension, that they're not always visible. What was it about this particular circumstance that allowed this interaction to take place, this engagement, this interaction, this awareness from third dimension to second dimension and from second dimension to third dimension? They had literally the kind of engagement that could be said to have taken place on a common plane. Is this a common occurrence? No, it is not. Because it is an uncommon occurrence, what made this particular situation happen, please? Was there something miasmic, temporal, or locational? No. Was there something astronomical? Sun, moon, stars? Something about the Earth's placement on a galactic path? Yes. So it's
our position
interacting with the galactic plane, not with the solar plane. Did it open a kind of wormhole or multi-dimensional portal, if you will, that allows second dimension and third dimension to come into contact? Yes. Mark, yes. Yes. So it was a unique timing.
The thing about it is it's something that can be detected, because if there were military people and the one here, they knew it was going to happen. So it's something that they can forecast.
Mark would like to know, is this something within human military awareness as something that is suspected, known, or predictable? Yes. So is it something that is suspected? Is it something that it is known? Yes. And is that predictable? They're working on it. So they're not always right. They're trying, but they're not always right.
But I guess we can't catch one. How come we can't catch one?
Can we catch one? If the overlap into third dimension is there, yes, you can.
Wow.
So as long as as long as they are in their second dimensional space and outside of our harm, live and let live. Yes, live and let live. But this, I think, was a very, very unique situation where territories that aren't meant to cross, because now we're not talking land territory, we're talking frequency of experience and existence, had a crossover.
Because when these things are tracked, they say that the tracks just stop at a point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how our picture, you'll see it on our picture.
Yeah, we found the pictures in the mud, and then there's no more after that. Just
And
that's it.
it wasn't going into the water.
Nope.
No.
No. There was like a path on the side of the river, and it just walked right. It just happened to step right through that muddy part, and then right after that, no more tracks.
Okay, so let's find out if the bubble of overlap, whatever this is, this bubble of overlap between dimension 2 and dimension 3. They say a lot of shadow beings, like shadow elements that are spied and seen, they also hail from second dimension. So I'd like to find out whether this overlap of second dimension and third dimension, is there a regular timing to the overlap? From an astronomical perspective, you could call it a regular timing. In our time period, for the length of a human lifetime, is the likelihood that one of these bubbles of overlap or regions of overlap would happen more frequently than once in a human's lifetime? No. So they're that rare. They're that rare for an overlap to happen.
Yeah, I've been camping my whole life. Never seen nothing like that.
So the feeling that I'm getting, it's like it's a coming together and then a going apart. And it's just for that little bit, right? And if something happens, yay. If something doesn't happen, it's as though it never happened, right?
But are there other places on Earth where there's conditions in the geology and maybe magnetic anomalies where this is a more common occurrence?
Okay, Mark's question is anomalies related to magnetism in Earth that brings about this kind of unique overlap. The concept of magnetism is not relevant or applicable to this. Can you ask something else?
Geological structures, different
Earth locations, crystal quartz deposits. Do any of these things hold any bearing on where these locations take place? No. It sounds to me like it's regional to wherever we are in the galactic plane, wherever we cross over something specific. So it's almost like there's a wake or a turbulence or some kind of something that's going through. And when the Earth is passing through that, we're going to enter a period of time where you're going to have random spots, pinpoints, if you will. And if any of those random spots and pinpoints happen to overlap in their natural environment, then that's what will come through. If it's touching, like, let's say the Sahara Desert, and you get a pinpoint of experience happening, then something of second dimension and third dimension coming together may show a manifestation even in the Sahara Desert, but it's probably not going to be these. It's probably going to be something that is designated to that particular zone, but for that vibration.
Yeah. And so the last question I would have is there a schedule? And like, how often do we go through these conditions? Would it be a yearly thing? A decade thing?
So the one question is the likelihood of it happening more often than once in the average human lifetime is slim for any given location. So if you're alive for 75 years in one particular location, maybe something could happen once during that 75-year lifetime. But it's not going to happen frequently.
Because I'm getting reports of people seeing pterodactyls and all sorts of stuff in different places.
Really?
One of the areas in question was blown to hell by an atomic bomb. So
is it possible that the detonation of an atomic bomb can create an opening into these, yes. And is it an opening into multi-dimensions? Like from 3, can it open to 2 or to 4? Yes. And from 3, can it jump and go directly to 1 or to 5? No, it will go through sequentially. It'll go through dimensions sequentially. So if pterodactyls were being seen, is that a temporal kind of shift? Because pterodactyls existed earlier in the timeline of Earth's history? That's a 50%. Okay, so there's a 50% probability that it could, and I guess it may be depending on what causes the opening, it could create a dimensional touching, like between 2 and 3, or between 3 and 4, or it could create a time rift opening. It's not always specific or consistent. I think it's dependent. I think it's dependent on, what is it dependent on? The nature of how it's opened? The energy of the opening. So the nature of the energy of the opening determines what you're opening to. You're either opening to a shift in time, or you're going to open to a dimensional shift, which could be construed as a shift in time or a shift in place. Yeah.
Because there's some locations where, like you guys said, the park ranger saw it 10 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other locations I know of where anytime people go out, they're seeing stuff, they're hearing things, they're getting stones thrown at them. And you sort of wonder, what is it? What's the difference in a place where it happens a couple of decades apart, or a place where it happens every weekend? And do they have any control? Are they a slave to the circumstances, these creatures, or do they have some sort of a control or a knowing of when it's going to happen?
They're in control of nothing. They're in control of nothing. Would this be considered part of natural phenomenon? Yeah. They're subject to that aspect of natural phenomenon.
Must be a real pain in the ass if you're a Bigfoot.
I would say. Talk about a confusing life. Wow. It could be a very, very confusing life.
Our new saying is Bigfoot saw us, but nobody believes him.
It very well could be. Because if you try to see it from their point of view, he may have had this experience, just like one of us may see an apparition of something or a sighting like this, and we're going and trying to tell our buddies, hey, I saw this, and they don't believe us. I believe that the same thing could be happening.
Yeah, I don't even like to tell my story anymore. People look at me like I'm crazy.
I don't.
Wrong with me.
I definitely don't look. I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel that way at all. And I guess we're just extremely honored that you trusted us enough to share your frightening experiences, with us, and give us this opportunity to connect with you spiritually, energetically, as well as physically here on Zoom, to be able to ask all of these questions, because you were the ones who had the experience. I feel that the nature of the questions and the ability to maybe receive answers would be seriously compromised if we didn't have you guys, with us, because you had this experience.
Guess our main question, we've always wondered, why us? Like, why did this have to happen? What am I supposed to learn from it? Besides being traumatized or terrorized, why us? Why did that happen? What is the spirit? What does God want us to learn or do with it?
From your supervisory angels, so now leaving the entire realm of any other beings, third dimension or second dimension aside, from your own supervisory angels, you will perceive this as a random happenstance. Mm-hmm. But as you know, nothing ultimately is random, but for what you make it. So if in your heart, nothing about this was random, then nothing about this was random. So now the meaning is what you create of it. Knowing now that it had no intent to kidnap or harm you as people. And thankfully it was startled by the dog. So it was not going to be in a position, I think, to harm Roxy. Now that you know that, what meaning do you make of the experience that you've had?
That, in a weird way, it was a blessing to be able to see such a mystical creature. That I feel then, if it wasn't going to hurt me or my family, then I'm pretty darn lucky to be able to see something that's
Tell the story.
just something.
Something that's not
Nobody-
supposed to be real.
Yeah.
For me, I take it as strengthening my soul. It strengthened my soul.
How?
Is what
How
it did
so?
for me.
How so? 'Cause it scared the bejesus out of you.
Oh, yeah, it scared the life out of me. Yeah, but at the same
Afterwards.
time, it strengthened my soul as far
To
as
not be scared no more.
not really be as scared anymore. And I don't know, it changed me.
Makes you
It
feel like
changed my soul.
makes you feel like you've seen and felt the ultimate.
I think anytime that we're in a position where we witness, and especially if you're not on your own, there's other people that you can share the experience with. When you witness something that shows you that there's more to our existence and more to this world than what we live and breathe every single day, that's a good news story.
I agree. Fabulous.
Is there anything else, Mark, that you spiritually pick up on?
Not really. I wouldn't read too much into it. You were lucky. You're a good, right place at the right time. You're level-headed spiritual people who don't discount things. You're open. That's all you have to be. You're open. That's as much of a reason why you experience things as anything else, is you're a person that's open to the experience. I'm sure you'll have plenty more. I mean, I would pack up and go camping again.
Oh man.
Being able to ask all of these questions, the questions that came to me, the questions that came to Mark, and to you folks as well, kind of gives me a feeling of what might be happening with these unexplained disappearances of people, just like Mark was saying, disappearing out of the national parks, disappearing out of just random places. Perhaps our Q&A session with higher understanding will help us understand that it is possible for all of these random pinpoints and crossovers of experiences and dimensions and time issues to happen. Perhaps they're helping us to understand so much more than just Bigfoot. Thank you so much for getting over maybe whatever fears you might have had about wanting to talk with us. I hope you'll have zero regrets about having shared your story with us. We certainly have no regrets whatsoever. Thank you so much, Rick, Renee, Lexi, and to Roxy, and to Little Peanut in heaven. Join us again for another quintessential experience. Be prepared to have your mind blown. Mine just was. We'll see you next time. Thank you.